My Weird School Fast Facts. Pizza, Peanut Butter, and Pickles. Written by Dan Gutman. Pictures by Jim Pelot. Chapter 3. Oops! Foods invented by mistake. Chocolate chip cookies. Ruth Wakefield and her husband ran the Toll House Inn in Gutman, Massachusetts, and Ruth prepared all the food. One night in the 1930s, she decided to make chocolate cookies for the guests. The only problem was that she was out of baker's chocolate. So she chopped up a block of Nestle semi-sweet chocolate she had lying around. She thought it would melt like regular baking chocolate, but it didn't. The chocolate pieces were scattered all over the cookie, and the chocolate chip cookie was born. Word got around, and sales of Nestle semi-sweet chocolate went through the roof. Nestle offered Ruth a lifetime supply of free chocolate, and they started selling pre-chopped chocolate chips called Nestle Toll House Real Semi-Sweet Chocolate Morsels. Ruth Wakefield's recipe was on the package, and it's still there today. Sadly, the Toll House Inn caught on fire and burned down in 1984. A sign there marks where the chocolate chip cookie was born. Nachos. Ignacio Anaya worked at a restaurant called the Victory Club in Mexico. One day in 1943, a group of ladies came in to eat. For some reason, the chef wasn't around. Ignacio didn't know what to say. He didn't know what to do. He had to think fast. So he covered a plate of tostadas with grated cheese and put it in the broiler to melt the cheese. Then he put some jalapenos on top. The ladies loved the new dish. Because Ignacio's nickname was Nacho, he called it Nacho's Special. And the rest is snacking history. By the way, the microwave oven was also invented by accident. In 1945, an engineer named Percy Spencer was working on radar for a company called Raytheon. He was experimenting with microwaves when he noticed that a candy bar in his pocket had melted, and the rest is history. The sandwich. Do you know who invented the sandwich, Arlo? Bob Sandwich? It was John Montagu, 4th Earl of Sandwich in England. There are a few theories about how it happened. One says Montagu was in an intense gambling game in 1762 and didn't want to leave the game for a meal, so he ordered his cook to prepare him something he could eat without leaving the table. The cook brought to him some beef between 2 pieces of bread. Another theory says Montagu was working at his desk for many hours, so he needed a meal he could eat without having to use a knife and a fork. Nobody knows which theory is right, but we can thank the Earl of Sandwich for this great invention. Potato chips. Legend has it that one day in 1853, a chef named George Crumb was working at a restaurant in Saratoga Springs, New York. A customer ordered fried potatoes, and George cooked them up. But the customer sent them back, complaining that they weren't thin enough. George was a little annoyed, but you know what they say, the customer is always right. So George fried up a new batch of fried potatoes that were sliced thinner. The customer sent them back again. Well, by that time, George was getting angry, so he sliced up some potatoes ridiculously thin. He salted them, fried them, and had them delivered to the annoying customer. That'll show him. As it turned out, the customer loved the thinly sliced fried potatoes. Word got around about how good they were, and they came to be known as the Saratoga chip. Cheese Puffs and Pop-Tarts. Cheese Puffs were invented by a company that made food for cows. In 1935, Edward Wilson was working for Flackle Company in Beloit, Wisconsin. The company made feed for livestock using a grinding machine that turned kernels of corn into flakes. To prevent the machine from clogging, the workers would pour moist corn into it. Airy puffs of corn would shoot out, and they hardened when they hit the air. Wilson decided to take some puffs home to experiment with, and he added oil, cheese, and seasonings. The result was delicious. He called the new food corn kernels. They were so popular that Flackle Company ended up changing its name to Adams Corporation, at least partly so people wouldn't think their snacks were intended for cows. Pop-Tarts also came from the animal world. In 1961, Post developed a dog food called Gaines Burgers that was moist but didn't have to be refrigerated. They decided to try the same idea with food for people in the form of fruit filling that would stay moist and safe to eat without needing to be refrigerated, creating a pastry called Country Squares. Before they were available in stores, Kellogg's introduced their own fruit-flavored Pop-Tarts. The name was a play on the pop art movement of the 1960s. Ice cream cone. It's so simple. You take some ice cream and put it in a cone to eat it. No dishes or spoon to wash. They've probably been doing that for 1,000 years, right? Well, the truth is that before 1904, nobody in the world had ever eaten an ice cream cone. At the World's Fair in St. Louis that year, an ice cream vendor sold so much ice cream that he ran out of dishes. The guy in the booth next to him was Ernest Hamwi, an immigrant from Syria. He was selling a thin, crispy pastry called zalabia. When the ice cream vendor ran out of dishes, Hamwi offered him some zalabia to put the ice cream in. I don't need to tell you what happened after that. By the way, another immigrant invented the cone itself. Italo Marchiani came from Italy to sell lemon ices on the streets of New York. In his spare time, he invented a machine to roll cones. Legend has it that Marchiani was at the St. Louis World's Fair, and he was the ice cream vendor who ran out of dishes. But legends are legends, of course. Slurpees. When he came home after World War II, Omar Nedelik bought a Dairy Queen in Kansas. The soda fountain was constantly breaking down, so one day in 1958, Omar put some soda pop in a freezer to keep it cool. Then he forgot about it. When he served half-frozen sodas to his customers, they said they actually liked it that way. A friend suggested the name Icy for the slushy soda, and Omar advertised it as the coldest drink in town. There was so much demand that Omar built a new machine to make ices, and he started selling them too. In 1965, 7-Eleven licensed the machine and renamed the drink Slurpee. Corn flakes. When you pick an ear of corn, you don't see flakes. You see kernels. Somebody had to turn those kernels into flakes. Those somebodies were Will Kellogg and Dr. John Kellogg. The brothers ran a sanitarium in Battle Creek, Michigan, and they were always trying to come up with healthy foods that their patients would like. One day in 1898, they accidentally let some boiled wheat go stale. Instead of throwing away the bat, they tried rolling it. It cracked into flakes. Interesting. Then the Kellogg brothers toasted the flakes and asked their patients to taste them. They liked the toasted flakes so much that Will and John experimented with other grains. Corn was a natural, and breakfast was never the same. We'll talk more about the Kellogg brothers in Chapter 5.